Hello and welcome everyone to this week's One People show. Today's show has in fact been pre-recorded. We're doing this on Sunday evening, my time, and here in Queensland, Australia, and it's various times in various parts of the world. We did this because everybody's schedules, unfortunately, just could not come together for the live show. So please welcome, as usual, Brian Kelly and Dee from Removing the Shackles and Breaking the Silence and Transpicuous News and a whole bunch of other things. And of course, we've got Mel V in the background, way back there. One of two beautiful people behind the CCN network. And we've also got Sacha Stone, one of the well-known faces of New Earth Nation and New Earth projects. And I think today is going to be an interesting, if the preamble was any indication, this show is going to be a very interesting discussion on some of the occult symbolism and occult meanings and occult intent of some of what's being seen to be playing out in the world right now. So sit back, grab a drink, because I think you're going to need one, and enjoy. So welcome everybody.
Hi.
Hey ho.
So we've got Brian and Sacha in Bali.
Hey Mel, way back.
In Morocco. We've got Mel way back there in where are you?
Oh, I'm somewhere in Europe.
Somewhere in Europe.
Undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location. So, okay, Dee, did you want to kick this off? I have the feeling you've probably got quite a bit to say right now, and so do I, but you go for it.
Okay, so to give a very quick preamble into this, we've had ongoing conversations.
If everybody could mute who's not talking, that would be great. That would help out.
We've had ongoing conversations. I mean, I've discussed it on Transpicuous News. We've discussed it personally, Lisa and I, Mel and I, of the significance of events right now going on in the world. We've talked about CERN. CERN is a big one that just keeps coming up again and again. And this past week, with the Germanwings air crash into the Alps, followed immediately by an announcement by CERN that, oh, we've had a little accident and short-circuited something because of a faulty piece of something, because, you know, you do that with the biggest, you know, hadron collider in the world, just have faulty little pieces lying around. There's something going on. And the effects have been felt worldwide. And this is a conversation that Lisa and I have been having, is there seems to have been something happened this week, something tangible. We all know or the vast majority of those who are into all of this know that there's an occult aspect, a satanic ritual aspect. And that's one of the things that I talked about, was that this crashed airplane was indeed a blood sacrifice.
Give them all the numbers that are surrounding this.
Sorry?
Give them the numbers that surround this crash.
Okay, so we have the flight is an A320, so an Alpha 320. 3 being March 20th, which of course was the spring equinox. It was also the full solar eclipse and the blood moon. You have the fact that the plane crashed approximately 320 kilometers from CERN in the French Alps. You have 144 passengers on board, which anyone who knows numerology and also, of course, the Christianity mythos, 144 is a really, really big number. We have the various aspects of different things that played out. The fact that, I mean, the alternative media is tearing this crash apart, because every time the media comes out and the agencies come up with another piece to try and explain how this happened, immediately the alternative media is just ripping it to shreds, going, yeah, it doesn't work that way. It's as if they just cannot make their lie even remotely hold on this. And a lot of people have woken up to, what the hell just happened? Okay, now the one thing I also want to say about the A320 Airbus, okay, A and Alpha is apparently this spring, because I don't follow astrology, but apparently this spring equinox was the movement into Aries, which is the beginning of a new cycle, i.e. the beginning of the cycle, the alpha. These little things are really, really important with their...
The A320 is also one of the few airlines left, apparently, that can still be remotely controlled from the ground.
Exactly.
That's correct. And that's the seminal thing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if any of you are familiar with what Gordon Duff put out yesterday. And okay, well, that's phenomenal, because the Royal Jordanian Air Force pilots leaked through the manual, the technical manual and tech spec of that aircraft.
Yeah.
And there are 3, I think, override protocols. Those doors cannot lock out crew.
No.
It's not possible.
No.
The crew can always access and get back in. So that was a crock of nonsense for a start.
Yeah, that was one of the big things. Jim Stone just recently did, and I actually published all, because of Jim Stone's website, he nothing is published as an independent article, so once it flashes by, it's almost impossible to locate. So I republished out everything he's written on this, and he talks about the door, and he talks about that's all bullshit about they couldn't get in. You can get in. There's an override on the inside, there's an override on the outside. It's a coded one, and when that door lock is set from the inside of the complex, it only lasts for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It only lasts.
And the biggest telltale, of course, I think only came out really in the last 24 hours or so, unless I'm behind the times, seeing the topographic satellite imagery of the scattering of the debris. It is categorically now forensically evidenced that all of the debris of the plane was scattered by hand only on areas within those mountain passes, which were traversable by foot, i.e. by staged operators who were hand placing the debris. Any area which is not accessible by feet did not have any debris in it. I mean, this is unbelievable. You've got to study those topographic maps. Incredible.
Well, here's the...
And even if you got it, sorry. I was going to say, even if you're looking at a cop who's been taken off duty because they're unstable or whatever, and they get put back on duty, they're on desk duty for 12 months under supervision. If that co-pilot was apparently off because he was a little bit unstable, his first job back is not as co-pilot.
No.
Of a flight with, a couple of hundred people that he's responsible for.
Not in a million years. Not in a million years. But let's not forget, Lisa, that we also found in the debris the piece of the fuselage which happened to have the ID of the plane, that happened to be found intact. Okay. Oh, and one big tire. Okay, small.
That sounds like a passport at the end of the Twin Tower to me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's
I was thinking the same thing.
The first night, so the crash happened in the morning at 9:38 local time in the morning. They went in, they had helicopters ready, and you have to look at the announcements that came out, the worldwide announcements by global leaders, i.e. Hollande, Obama, instantly. Instantaneously, they were announcements that there was no survivors.
Yeah.
Now, they sent helicopters in, and the big things that were said was, nothing is being touched today. We are just looking. And it was locked down. And yet the next day they find the black box, and the black box is there, but the memory recorder device that's inside it is missing. Isn't that funny? So, you just send in some team to go in, and they go in and they grab it and they pull out the data that they need. And if it's probably been nicely reprogrammed, if they have released it, this is one of those pieces, right? But it was, when you look at the time play out on it, is just unbelievable. Here's the one thing. So first of all, when I did a Google search first thing that morning and I was trying to get some information, I've got the articles coming up on Google search, and of course they give you the timestamp of when that article was placed. And you get, this was posted 2 hours ago. An article from the UK Mirror posted 4 hours ago. Oh, here's an article from Zero Hedge that was posted 2 days ago. Okay, wait a second. 2 days ago? And I got the screenshots, of course. Now, and you get the alarm bells, and then you get all the announcements by global leaders, literally within an hour.
But if you take what Sacha just said about hand-placed,
Yeah.
so did a plane crash? Has there been a blood sacrifice? Did people die? I mean, what are we looking at then?
Well, here's the thing. If we talk about, one of the things that I talked about when I did the special was, I'm going to give the example. Back in 2009, November 1st, 2009. And it made the mainstream media like this big of an article about an airplane. It was a South American airline flying from Spain to Bolivia. And basically, they ended up back in Spain again. And the whole article was kind of like, oh, you know, they instead of landing in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, they ended up in Santa Cruz, Spain. And the flights, they just got confused. They must have just gotten confused and flown, you know, completely in the wrong direction. Now, I happen to have a really good friend who's Bolivian, who at the time gave me the information and said, no, no, no. This flight left Spain, was all the way across the Atlantic and was on approach in Bolivia, an hour outside of landing. And all of a sudden, they found themselves back in Spain again. Now,
And this was also connected to CERN.
a week later, CERN announces, oh, they have a little problem. This little bird flew overhead and it dropped a piece of bread on this power thing, and it shorted everything out. Because again, you know, with CERN, you know, the biggest scientific expenditure on the face of the planet, you have apparently open circuit boards where a little bird can drop a piece of bread on it and short the entire program out.
Actually, if you look at their page, they also say they're the most respected scientific.
Well, when you say
What's
scientific,
a little bird doing with a little? Go ahead, Sacha.
when you say scientific, the biggest scientific format, what you mean, of course, is the biggest multilaterally taxpayer-funded Babylonian ritualistic exercise in the history of mankind. Yeah.
Yes. But
Is that in the fine print of the website somewhere?
the mainstream media, it's science. Science.
Of course it is. God particle.
Yes.
God particle.
We gotta
Yes.
Okay, so I want to hear
Must-
everybody's theory on what this
Must
thing
find
is
that
really
God
about.
particle.
So what is CERN really trying to do? Because I got my own theory.
Okay, guys,
wanna hear
I'm going to
yours.
give you. I'm going to give you a story. Okay.
On you go.
No one knows this. First time I've ever said this. About 7-8 years ago, Humanitad. I was contacted by one of our Intel network. He's a man who's connected to the intelligence service in the United Kingdom. He's an academic, theologian, historian, good friend, good man. And he told me that they had been contacted in one of the principal universities in the United Kingdom, which is where he's affiliated, and I'm not going to mention where. He had been approached, his crew had been approached by the Russian intelligence service, who had asked this academic unit of intel guys in Britain if they could help decode something which the Russian military satellites had picked up from space. Looking down upon Iraq, they had seen a huge mobilization of American military hardware, tanks, hyenas, soldiers, the whole lot, huge. And it was a mobilization exercise, which on the ground, soldiers were being given the orders to do north-northwest for X miles and turn to whatever. But from satellite, what that mobilization exercise translated into was carving a huge symbol, a totem, into the desert, which on the ground you would never know, you could never see. But from satellite, thousands of soldiers and hardware, military hardware, were being used to undertake a ceremonial, ritualistic, symbolic exercise. Right. The Russians couldn't work out what the symbol was that was being carved into the desert. It was clearly an articulated symbol. So they spoke to their friends in British academia, in the intel community, and asked them to decode it. It came to Humanitad, and we were asked if we could participate in helping to decode it, because we have and had a very good academic brain trust of anthropologists and people connected to symbology. We were in the middle of doing a huge international project at the time, a research project, which I had commissioned from universities around the world to try and identify principal symbols used in the cosmologies of all nations and faiths in the last 10,000. That was the commission. We wanted to identify them. So anyhow, we got caught up in this. Bottom line is, we identified, or it was identified, that that symbol was being carved in the desert some 7-8 years ago by US military hardware, and thousands of soldiers on the ground was no less than Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. So we never knew beyond that point what it meant or why the US military were carving that symbol into the Iraqi desert, but there you have it.
What year was this? Sorry?
I have to go back to my records, which are in London on the main data bank. I don't have them here in Bali, but it must have been 7 or 8 years ago. And it was building up to 2012. So if you talk about the sacrifice of innocence, the grand Canaanite ritualism being enacted, especially with George Bush Sr. carpet bombing 200,000 some young Iraqi soldiers who were in retreat from Kuwait, when Hussein had been set up to take back Kuwait, and once he got there with his army, realized he'd been set up for the biggest fall in modern history. Yeah. His 200,000 odd soldiers were ordered to retreat back to Baghdad, quick, smart, and at a given point on that retreat journey, they were carpet bombed by George Bush Sr. Those 200,000 kids were slaughtered. If you study what that longitude and latitude node point is, and the telluric and etheric energetics, or the dielectric and paramagnetic energetics that represented in anchoring the proverbial fear matrix for another cycle, you don't need to look much further than the sacrifice of innocence that was engineered in Iraq. So whether that was a sacrifice for and to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, Anunnaki, who knows? I'm not particularly interested in the stories beyond these points, but it's interesting nonetheless. So you go back to CERN, and it's quite possible that with CERN we're talking about a similar phenomenon.
Okay, here's, and you know me, I don't believe in coincidence. I'm flipping through, after we talked last night, Lisa, I'm flipping through some videos on CERN, and I just randomly click on this one, and it was, I will try and find the link, I think I still have it open. It was very amateurly done, and the guy who does the description drones on it, if you could just cut the volume out and just watch it. He has analyzed the Hadron Collider with a picture of the Mayan calendar and a picture of the roof of St. Peter's Basilica. And he does this overlay, and you show, like, there's the picture of that classic picture you see of the CERN Collider. So, and you see the big round circle at the end with the centerpiece, etc. And then it kind of comes out at you. And he does this overlay of, and he analyzes each point of the various pieces to the Mayan calendar. And I swear to God, you can see it. Each piece of the Mayan calendar is represented in the overlay when you look at this picture of the Hadron Collider. I was like,
can you try and find the link while you're...
Yeah. So the
Okay, D,
like that, seriously, is like, are you kidding me?
Let me give you another one. Let me give you something else here, now that you brought this up. The man who decoded the long count Solkin back in, I think, the 70s, Jose Arguelles, Valon Votan, who was a beloved friend of mine. He died, unfortunately, in, I think, 2011. He stayed for a month at our base in Bali a couple of years before he died, and we got the chance during that month to speak a great deal. Again, he was the great Mayan figure who decoded the long count Solkin and put the 2012 meme out into the open. It wasn't known before he did that. Secondarily, he also triggered that huge event in 1987, I think it was, what was that event called?
Cosmic convergence.
Around the world. It was the harmonic convergence. Thank you.
Harmonic convergence.
Yeah. So Jose was an extraordinary man, but one of the things that he taught me or educated me to was the fact that when he had published his books based on prophecy of the critical node points around the Earth, I think there were 26 or 27 some node points around the Earth in the ethers, which were the etheric anchor points that would, if they were actuated, would open up the noosphere and engage that next quantum leap in planetary consciousness for the planet and people. And he pointed out to me that since he'd published those findings based on his prophetic seeing, the US military effectively thanked him for publishing that in the 70s and used his mathematic to then define the node points at which they place and have still remained the military satellites in the geostationary orbit. So if you study a D, or you should be able to find this anywhere, where the geostationary US military satellites are in geostat orbit of the planet, 26, 27, 28 of them, those node points and how and where those node points correspond to things like what we've just seen with the German crash and or the CERN exercise, that could be an interesting piece that's connected.
Well, then you have to wonder about that one satellite that just blew up last month.
But what I'm saying is that the sacrifices that are being enacted, the blood sacrifices, invariably feed into the anchoring, the plugging of those noospheric node points.
Yeah.
Because that's where the energetic has to be fed in to maintain that supposed fear matrix.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we were.
So how does this all relate to the CERN connection? Like, what are they actually out to do? You know, like what based on all your research,
my intuitive sense is that the CERN is acting as some kind of supra-quantum accelerator or augmentation technology for these ritualistic ceremonies, which take the ceremony and amp it up into the ethers in an unprecedented way. So that is my intuitive sense, that when you're spinning these particles, you are taking us outside of the normative mechanics and building blocks of our time-space reality framework, and you're beginning to bend and push that envelope into higher etheric forms. So you're still in time-space, but you're really bending the rules as far as you can bend them before you breach time-space altogether. That is my intuitive take on this, that it's an augmentation. Ritual
draconian amplification device.
Yes, because the rituals that are being enacted today do not have the same holding power that they did 50 years ago, 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago. So they've needed to amp up technology to help to augment these ritualistic ceremonies.
Well, it's interesting because, it's like I said, as I went digging over this last 3 weeks, I've really been digging into CERN. I stumbled across an article talking about basically CERN dealing with, and this is where you get into the whole thing of words, and people have different words to describe what is in essence the same thing, of the connection between CERN and the opening of the astral levels, the astral planes. And the two things that come up, of course, CERN announced that themselves, that they're going to open up basically a hole into a parallel universe. Well, call parallel universe another astral level, another dimensional level.
Absolutely.
And one of the articles that I read, which was very interesting, now there was a very Christian religious overtone to it, but they talked about CERN in consciousness, and that they're trying to use CERN to create basically like a hive mind. And this is where this conversation that Lisa and I've been having for a week solidly now.
There are so many things I could throw in right here that I don't even know where to start.
And that hive mind thing is being planted into mainstream ideas. How many movies, how many books have we seen in the last 4 or 5 years come out talking about hive mind, and the aliens and opening of portals, etc. It's like a theme that just keeps replaying over and over.
But that's the feedback. That is the feedback that is required, because they have to enact the magic has got to be eyes wide shut in broad daylight. It's got to be eyes wide shut. First, the spell has to be cast. Then the ritualistic shedding of blood is a necessary frequency interphase engagement. Okay, and once that's done, you've made your offering, and once the offering has been made up, the induction or the invocation then occurs, and that is inviting and creating the permissions, the feedback permissions for that archonic and anu interference into the psychological realm of Homo sapiens sapien. And of course, that realm, psychological realm of Homo sapiens sapien, then feeds through our own kundalini into the inner earth telluric energetics, focuses back into the iron crystal dodecahedron of the inner sun, or the central sun of the earth, and bada boom, you are now able to drive spaceship Earth into different timelines.
Okay, I feel like, Mel, I just have to check with you. Are you recording?
I'm trying to wrap my head around Homo sapien square. Yeah, it's recording. It says recording up on the top.
How else do you take over control of a planet, an entire planet?
Exactly.
Another thing that, okay, I don't even know where to start with this, but I'm just going to start. 7 generations. That's another thing that's been going through. So, CERN, to me, okay, I feel like our consciousness, our history, everything that we believe to be so, gets reset on regular intervals. Literally, memory's wiped. And we are programmed with this idea of linear time. That's our history. That's what happened 1,000 years ago. That's what happened 500 years ago. That's what happened 2,000 years ago. That's what happened whatever. And we've got this concept of linear time that's been programmed into our consciousness. And it's not true, essentially. That there is a cycle, and for whatever reason, the Fibonacci sequence spiral keeps coming to me. But from the outside within, from the outside down to the center.
I'll tell you why that comes in later.
Okay. That I know that in the Bible it says the sins of the father will be bestowed upon the son for 7 generations. I know that there was an incredibly powerful healing program that I was a part of, where a gentleman could identify the frequency of everything within you. And he could, if there was an ailment, for example, he could say that, yes, okay, this was, if it was inherited, he could say it was inherited from your mother or your father, and she got it from her, your mother got it from her father, and your father got it, and he could trace it back for 7 generations only. It stopped. There's something about the 7 generations. There's something about the number 7. It's the diagram that I brought up in the interview with Mark Sargent, and on last week's One People show, showed the 7 heavens and the 7 earths, 7 chakras. I mean, we got the 7s everywhere. There's something to me about the cycle of 7 generations. It's as if, and I do believe absolutely that the human body is designed to last forever. It matures, it reaches a peak of function, which is connected to the endocrine system and a whole bunch of things. And at that point, that's where it's supposed to stay and continue to replenish and replicate. There's a whole bunch of shit going on that has shortened our lifespans. And it's because you can't live through these too many of these cycles, or you'd start to go, hang on. So I think CERN is because they, whatever, have had the opportunity to put another coin in the slot and replay this program and do this reset so many times, and only so many times. So whatever they've used in the past cannot be used again. And that CERN is an attempt to once again reset our consciousness that everything that we've been told about the history of this planet, including what human nature is, and that our history is full of war and empire domination and destruction, is bogus, so that we can do things like enter World War I and World War II and bomb other countries and not think about it too much, because our history's full of it, right? But we've got all of these ancient, supposedly ancient, who knows, it might only be a couple of thousand years old, supposedly ancient civilizations underneath the oceans that have been discovered. We've got the ones that are on top of the planet that, you know, and we're given a history as to how old they are and when they existed and when they peaked. But unless you've lived long enough to actually live through it and then there's no way that we can verify any of this. And I think everything that we're doing and seeing and talking about right now, including the whole flat Earth stuff, it's all part of this illusion totally breaking down. We are starting to see through it. CERN is not working. CERN is their attempt to reset the consciousness, give us the blank slate so they can insert the next story and start again. And it's not happening. It's not working. There is panic. There is mayhem. There is scrambling. Where people are feeling it, but they're identifying it as yes, go ahead, Sacha. I'm rambling.
Nothing that has ever been conceived and then paid for by billions of dollars of taxpayers' money could ever work. It can't. It can never deliver on what it promised. It's hardwired into that deviant construct that a multi-billion-dollar exercise, which is a fleecing of humanity's wage slavery, will never eventuate into the objective. It's not hard. Grace disallows that outcome. But you have to be an archon-driven entity with absent in sentient spark before you know that. You know, and I've got to say something else, that this, even if we could have a categorical vision of the timeline and have all the verifications of a given timeline, even that wouldn't make sense in the potpourri of reality, because we have all of these intermeshing timelines, which are all completely subverting and inverting other timelines as they intersect. So what we have to do is really transcend the need to answer questions in the temporal plane, or to try to make sense of this mindfuckery, because we're never going to. That's already written. So the best possible thing we can ever do at any given moment in time is to actually release ourselves pure truth.
That was like coitus interruptus, that was.
Coitus.
You gotta go back.
The point...
I lost it at mindfuckery.
Mindfuckery.
Oh.
From there.
Okay, the point I was trying to make is that we can never make sense in the temporal zone of time, space, of history, and all the referential guides and nodes and things that inform our minds, our intellects, our emotional and psychological bodies will never be satisfied, because they cannot. The only way we can make peace and sense of any of it is to disconnect absolutely from the pursuit of any of it, engage right here and now with an absolute moment of being here now, and then enter into the transcendent, which, if one is standing in the flame of pure truth, you can only enter into that transcendent space. So now we're removing our sense of seeing and doing, and it's becoming pure witness. And witness is the space that we can only ever get the snapshot or the litmus of true reality. And that's really what we've got to start doing, all of us, especially when we're being subjected to unbearable planetary psychological interference. We're being bombarded at the atomic, molecular, hormonal levels, blitzkrieged by all sorts of psyops toys and fractal interfacing technologies and frequency disruption technologies and DNA downgrading technologies. All of that stuff is at play. And it conspires to teach us one thing and one thing alone, that we must no longer use the old tools to try to get to the bottom of it. I'm just suggesting that our intuitive faculties are going to serve us a whole lot more right now than trying to mind map the logic of what we're seeing and hearing.
I got 3 things to say to what you just said.
What were you going to say? Real quick, I want to hear what Sacha was going to say about the spiral mentioned
That was one
earlier.
of them.
Okay.
The spiral.
I was going to say that the Fibonacci, the pi, the so-called sacred geometry, the Fibonacci and the pi, beware. Think about it. Go back to classical Greece, go back to the ancient Romanesque traditions, the Byzantine traditions, the Egyptian traditions. The Fibonacci and the sacred geometry in the accepted sense, and pi, golden ratio, are all encoded and encrypted in all of those old classical orders, okay? They have not served Homo sapiens sapien people. So-called sacred geometry in the accepted normative classic sense has been used also as a constraining and harvesting technology. Wake up. The quantum breaks out of those restraints and those constraints, and we have got
Everybody's got their hand up. We haven't actually heard from Mel yet, so come on, Mel.
Jump in here, Mel. 2 feet.
Oh, this is so exciting, guys. You know what's really brain stimulating sitting with you for? First off, I have to agree with Sacha about the Fibonacci stuff, and I explain to you why. Because if you get down to the etymology of dragons and reptilian, ophidian vibrations, as Aleister Crowley called them, the spiral, actually, if you look at what it means etymology, it comes from the word spiro or spiro, which actually means dragon. And that is why you find in classical Greek architecture, they have the columns. By the way, the root word kolu is a serpent root word. So that's Columbus, Columbia, and that fits into column. Much like spiral, it's why you always find the capitals of the columns with the spiral done into them. And that's why you always find what I call Illuminati architecture, the typical, and if you live in London, you know what the British Museum looks like typically. Columns with the ionic capitals, which are the sort of spiral capitals, Fibonacci sequence capitals, and then obviously with the frieze at the top, which normally has, if they've got the money, they've got marble, some kind of sacrificial or paganistic or pantheistic depiction carved into the top triangle that sits above the columns. Okay, and all of that is telling you a story if you know how to look at the etymology, the kind of all the mathematics that goes with it. And as you say, Sacha, not serving humanity.
Wasn't designed to serve humanity. It was designed by its very nature to act as harvesting technologies. And that same metric can be applied to mosques, to synagogues, to temples. Now, when you break out of that bullshit, where you've got constrained use of Fibonacci and golden mean and pi, which is formulaic and systemic and actually acts as a prison, when you break out of that into natural flow of Fibonacci, the way an oak tree grows, for instance, the oak tree doesn't grow in pure equiproportion. It grows in different ways. It operates in a fluid sense. It's measuring and weighing and checking and balancing the ethers and the liquidity of the planet and the atmosphere and even the environment. And then the oak tree will grow in direct answer to the environment. Okay, and it will be the perfect Fibonacci organic format. So we have to take our thinking away from the classical doctrines, the dogmas, the orthodoxies, which again are harvesting technologies, all of them, especially when they're taken on by priests and then used to create cartographic maps of our cities and our lives and the way that we educate ourselves and so on. All bloody nonsense. We need to have the courage to break absolutely out of all of those formats, fall back into our true default, which is you and me in the here and now deciding the next perfect step together. And fuck all the dogmas, fuck all the doctrines, fuck all the...
So here's the question I have. Lisa has been looking and seeing the whole Fibonacci spiral. I have been obsessed for the last couple of months of collecting spiral shells. Like, you should see the collection of spiral Fibonacci shells. I have hundreds, every color, every shape, every texture, and it's like an obsession. I can't help it. So what is that an indicator of? When I look at something like that replaying, it seems to me there's a consciousness aspect to it, that when multiple people are seeing the same thing or focusing on that, what's the reason?
Well,
I don't know that there's... Carry on, Mel.
Sorry. I would say to you, Dee, that it's not just you. The obsession with the spiral Fibonacci stuff is, you know, I have an absolute, when I'm sitting and I'm working and I'm listening to people giving me interviews, I'm not looking at them. I'm sitting there drawing spirals, okay, subconsciously. My doodling is spirals. Always. I always look down and what the whole page is sort of interlaced with spirals. And I can't seem to get away from that. I've asked myself the same question. I'm absolutely everywhere I go. I mean, I live in Europe, so you can imagine everything's this classical architecture, Illuminati architecture, where everything has these spiral capitals on the columns. And it's like, I will see it 15 borders along. Oh my God, there it is! It's there! I'm obsessed with it. I don't know. I don't know if it's a psyche of, like, if you have a red car, suddenly you notice how many more red cars there are on the road. If you're more aware of these things, you suddenly notice them more. Or if this is some sort of energetic fabric, a vibrational thing that's playing out and affecting all of us. I can't answer that, but what I would say is conscious awareness certainly does make you notice how prevalent certain things are that, you know, you stuck in your conscious.
You just used the right word. You used the right word there, Mel, consciousness. The foundational value that triggers inertia, that time and motion issue from is all connected to spin. Spin is everything. We know that. So, I mean, that is what Fibonacci is, just an emulation of that. Everything is spin.
I think it's part of what we're seeing that we're seeing the matrix, literally. You know, in the same way that we're starting to see all that flat Earth material, we're seeing the Fibonacci, and it's probably not going to be stopped there. You know, we're going to see literally.
Well, we're seeing the prism in the same way that DMT allows you to see that matrix, and there's other psychotropics that you can take where you can see that matrix, fractal matrix, which is all part of the prism complex, be sure, one way or the other, no matter how beautiful it may be.
The first thing that alerted me to that was from, you know, years ago, late teens, early 20s, tripping on LSD one day in the park. And they're lying there looking up. And I was not tripping. And they're going, oh, can you see the lines? And they were literally seeing a grid work in the sky. And of course I wasn't the only one tripping, so I was the only one not seeing it. And they were describing it. They were all describing exactly the same thing. They could literally see a grid work. And they'd never seen it before. So yeah, I know what you mean.
So can I give you another story?
Oh, please do. I love your stories.
Right. I spent a month in India a little over a year ago, and I was invited to spend that month with the great Vedic master, the Vajraratnam Raghavan, who is the great jewel of Ayurveda. And we had an interesting engagement. He had come to spend time with me in Bali. He had been sent by his master to come and engage with me and with the New Earth vision that was a part of this collective inspired noospheric vision. And so he had come to see me. He's an old man and a remarkable being. And I then returned the honor, or not the honor, the salute, and went and spent a month with him in India. In the course of that, I was taken under special purview to the oldest temple in India, okay, which folks like me are absolutely not allowed to go to, normally speaking. But I was on a special entry, and I was able to go into this underground catacomb-like temple, which was 10,000 plus years old, a lot older than any normal temple or mosque or anything like that, going way beyond. Now, what I've noticed was going into this extraordinary space, and I spent the best part of half a day there, was one, the priests living inside the underground temple were all very, very small creatures, 4 foot something, very strange, that lived in the dark. The underground temple was only lit by a gas lamp and torch and fire. And on no account were you allowed to take cameras in. And I was intrigued because I knew this place again. So, of course, I took my telephone in. Technically, it's not a camera. But if you hit the button at the right angle, you know, you might just get a photograph. And I did take a couple of... How much for these sacred cows? I don't regard anything as sacred. So I wasn't worried about violating anyone's idiocy. But I do have the photographs. And I will tell you what I saw. The oldest temple, okay, in Hinduism in India. And what I saw were carved out of stone, the columns in the firelight. Every single one of the columns was a Homo sapien female, clearly a virgin, standing up with a serpent coiled around her, with the serpent's head open, the dragon, and eating her from the crown down, devouring women. So that was, and you never see this kind of stuff written about cosmologically because in the books and the universities. But that was what was holding up the temple. Every single column was a sacrifice of the feminine, sacrifice of the female. So that's just what I want to talk about. That for me was very, very telling. That is our entire 10,000 years of our history, cosmologically, is predicated on that foundational principle. Now and we know that to be so. If we look at the patriarchal, Adamic and Abrahamic bullshit of the Orthodox Christian religions, and we look at the ghastly nibbling of, you know, little infants' genitalia by the rabbinical Jews in their odd tradition, and all of that weird stuff that goes on. You know, we've just got this principle of devouring, violating, defiling beauty, perfection, innocence, okay? So that's the litmus or the snapshot of the foundational human condition for many, many thousands of years. We all get that. We're all of us waking up to that. But what it seems to me is profoundly beautiful about this story is, and I know this to be so, I know this to be true, is that we, you and I, and our 7-odd billion brethren, living men and women, sons and daughters, emissaries of God, who are all variously awakening. Now let's take 10% of that lot and say that they are archon-driven, Satanist, blood-drinking, and I reckon my researchers have taught me firsthand that about 10% of the entire field of expression in the human bandwidth is completely locked down and owned by the satanic, reptilian, archonic intelligence, okay? But about 90%, I would suggest, is living men and women who are the harvest, continue to be the sacrifice, okay? The innocent. And that is all also encoded in the Roman tradition of the decimation principle, whereupon the sacrifice used to be 1 in 10 slaves at a given day would be decimated, would be murdered, literally. The 10th slave, slash their throat, slash the throat, slash the throat. Same thing when a battalion, or whatever you called them, of centurions had been in the field and fucked up and come back, they would literally decimate 1 in 10 as a punishment to that army, that battalion. So the business of decimation, taking down 1/10 as a blood sacrifice, which issues from the Holy Roman Empire, which of course is very much who and what we are today. Think about that as well. The decimation principle, the 1/10 principle is very important. But I'm leaving it at this. The point is this, is that it was the great unwashed, us, the 90% of innocent, harvestable, you know, living men and women who have incarnated for long periods of time, okay? We are the ones who determined to do that and be that a very long time ago. We came to this quadrant of the multiverse in order to be that sucker, that sacrifice, knowing that we would participate in a lot of very ancient yugas of time, but we would ultimately remember ourselves to ourselves. And when we do actuate, as we are doing so now, we will override all of those diabolical exercises, and we will carry with us all those lower realms of expression into their light path. And that's what we're doing. So as we move into this great awakening, believe me, all of those archons and anus and dracos and reticulan intelligences and elemental clouds are finding their way back to source, to the vibral mind of source for the first time in their entire expression. And that is the point of you and me. We're birthing that. And we were here in the cauldron of creation as emissaries of consciousness, of Godhead, to precisely be the birth principle of soul fabric. So all I can say is hallelujah for who and what we are, Lisa, Dee, Mel, Brian, because we are the shit and we're doing it right. And all the rest of the stuff is fine. Let these airplanes appear, disappear. Let the CERN God particles do their fancy bullshit. Let's just not really invest too much real attention on all of that temporal shenanigans, because that's what it is.
Actually, I just want to comment on one.
Holy shit. I don't even know how I could. So much I want to say to respond to that, but go ahead.
Hold on. This is the one thing. And I think, Sacha, it was probably one of the most important things that you just said, was the fact that it's not just us. It is also these archon, draconian, whatever you want to, I call them the controllers or the divines, who are also seeing. They've come to that point where they've gone, oh shit, oh shit. And it's that macro and microcosmic, right? As above, so below. What we are witnessing on this planet is a reflection of their own massive desperation, because they've seen the end of it too. They've seen the end of the spiral. They can see it. This is over. The experiment, if you want to call that, it's over. They see it too. And that's the desperation point that we can feel on this planet right now. And I think it is a very clear indicator of the panic that they're going through, their desperation, and these moves that they're making. And that's what we're feeling. In that matrix,
yes, indeed.
We're seeing the crumbling. It's all crumbling.
Yes, yes. We've already traversed the Rubicon. We've already moved through the Rubicon. In my humble opinion, we passed through it in the third quarter to the fourth quarter of 2008. And it was irretrievable, intractable. From that point on, we can never undo the great becoming, the revelation. The bifurcation was set. The die was cast in late 2008. And it is my fundamental witness, and I won't say belief because I hold no beliefs, but it is my fundamental witness that since that time, including through the 2012-2013 crossover, we have been simply engaging with the shadow of time. And we're still now living in the shadow of time. And in a sense, the shadow of time has been more compressed now, so we're feeling it. It's only because the dead rhinoceros that is charging towards us, which is the shadow of time, which we have killed, it's brain dead, but it is now closer than ever before because the laws of entropy are bringing it to heal. Now, just be very mindful and be in that state of grace and witness as the thing careens to a halt in front of us, because we might need to just move slightly to the left or slightly to the right. But that's really the dynamic of where it's at, which is why I say I very much encourage anyone who has the ears to hear this, that we should be really anchoring now our vision and our higher faculties into knowing the patterns of perfection that we are permissioned to now activate in this temporal realm. We've never been able to do that before. They've only ever been things we could kind of forecast or see for those in history who have had the power to bend time. And of course, you only bend time through empathy. The empathic wave that issues from the center of the human heart is the only thing that can bend time.
Now that's the perspective that makes the whole ride so much more fun and worth it, as far as I can see it right now. We've already won. You know?
That's where I came to.
Now we just
today.
have to imagine
That's
the
exactly
future
where I
that we
came to.
But when you're giving birth, Brian, you don't say "I've won" when
You've already
the
fucking won.
child is out. It wasn't ever a fight. It wasn't ever a battle. It was a soul covenant that you and I and all our brothers and sisters volunteered to separate from Source at the beginning of so-called time and come to this quadrant of the multiverse in order to scatter into a billion different aspects of id, in order to then claim the low and dredge the lower realms of expression in this quadrant and bring those elements into fruition themselves. We birthed soul at a billion, trillion different levels in our incredible journey together. And all I want to do is embrace my brothers and sisters and congratulate all of us who are now remembering our great journey and now the great becoming, the remembrance of who and what we are. Fuck me. That's hip.
Okay, Sasha, I'm going to give you where I ended up today then. I went on quite the journey today. And it's a combination of a week. But what I have noticed is over the course of the last week, I would say I've been experiencing three different things, and they've blended and they've been confusing to discern one from the other. There was my own personal stuff. There was the human collective, and there was them, right? The them stuff was absolute panic.
Yeah.
And the human collective was feeling it. We were buffering it. We were being bounced around by it. We were pulled and tugged and buried underneath it at times. And this 0 point at the end of the spiral is where we're at. And there's a holy fuck moment happening that is so profound and so deep. And what we're seeing on the ground, like with what's going on with Yemen, and Saudi Arabia is doing this into Yemen, and we see all the stuff that's going on across the top of North Africa, and it's all a distraction.
It is.
Because ultimately it is us, as you just said, in a far more eloquent way, of course, because that's what you do. We are the ones creating this reality. It is our collective imagination, as the show goes, that is running this show. And we have been this past week has been incredible in terms of pulling us out of that point of power, that point of center where we create. And we've been chasing our tails. I can feel the whole collective of humanity chasing its fucking tail this last week. Because everything matrix related, everything red tape and bureaucracy related has been just, it's like a dump truck drove into everybody's driveway and just tipped a load and pulled us out. And it's because of all those reasons and all those ways in which you said that we are being attacked. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how powerful we are, that they have to get us from so many angles, in so many ways, because we are, in fact, that powerful as creator beings. I mean, it starts before you're born. It doesn't end I don't think it ends when you die. And it's coming at you from every perceived and non-perceived angle, because we're just that powerful. And that's what we have to be reminded of, and that's what we have to get back to. And the rest of it is all just bullshit and distraction.
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right.
While they're off playing with I was going to say sperm. While they're off playing with CERN, that's their attempt at reset they've got all of these distractions over here for us to focus on. Meanwhile, we're not sitting in our power center.
Something like that. And look at Hermes Trismegistus and the great as above, so below. What is it that defines the Yemenis in Yemen? What is it that defines the Angolans in Angola? What is it that defines the Ecuadorians in Ecuador? Well, each of these different genomes and genetic types have got interferences and manipulations pledged to different elemental cloud intelligences and different extraterrestrial interferences, historically speaking. So you can simply see the map of cultures and faiths and different genomes as being a reflection of the ethers and what has been interposed and manipulated upon the face of the earth by the galactic family at large. Okay? That's fine. And so we've got all that interplay, which is interfering on the surface of the earth and creating these different colors, these different types. And then you've got the potpourri, the cauldron of all those types, where? In one place and one place alone. That's the United States of America, okay? Good old USA. The country that is now being set up as the biggest mass sacrifice, arguably in the history of our world. And this is why I really feel we need to change our perspective and our attitude. There is an antipathy working up into a fever pitch around the world against America, against our brothers and sisters in America. And this is precisely the time when we need to dig deep and find our highest expression, which is connected to our empathic waveforms and to our capacity to act as the absolution principle. That's me. That's Sacha. I'm going to absolve the whole of the United States of America for every crime against humanity. I'm going to own that aspect of me because it's me as well. And the very worst thing we could do, the last thing we should be doing, is allowing for this feverish gestalt to emerge where we start to demonize the United States and throw our brothers and sisters and consign them to the flames of hell. And the whole world is being ramped up to that. That is, as we know, the Jesuit plan anyway, is to set us up and pitch us against our own reflection. Be clear, North America is our perfect reflection. Yes, the police brutality is more in your face. The dumbed down stupidity of the American people in the mainframe. And I say this knowing that more Americans are going to see this broadcast than anyone else. And God knows I love my brothers and sisters, but what a stupid collective intelligence quotient we're dealing with right now, where you cannot see beyond your borders. You cannot see beyond your confines, beyond your Kool-Aid and beyond your goddamn television screens and the pornography of trivia to which you're indentured. And if the American, good people of America do not awaken within that bubble in the next 18 months to 36 months, then we have a major problem. But it is my belief that our brothers and sisters can only awaken if we are extending that empathic wave and not from the outside in, and not demonizing and not buying into this gestalt that tries to tell us that Americans are responsible for raping the world. No, they're not. The Jesuits, who are globalist, multinational, deviant sons of bitches operating from Geneva and the Vatican and United Kingdom, principally European, let's be clear, Khazarian bloodlines. These are the deviants. And in the main, they do not live in America, never did. But America has been set up for the fall. And we must not fall for that. Simply mustn't fall for it. It's why I wear a scarf with an American flag on it every time I do public speaking now. People think I'm so anti-America. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, America, there's a lot of Americans that are waking up pretty fast. I mean, you look at all the movements across the United States, and they're getting there. They're figuring it out slowly but surely. As an American, I got to stand for my pseudo people. I have a question for you, though, Sacha, that I've been wanting to ask you. Is so you're getting, oh shit, my cat is about to jump on my computer. Hold on. Don't jump on my computer. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So you're getting ready to launch ITMJ and on. Sorry about that. He jumps right on my laptop. It really pisses me off. My cat named Cat. ITNJ, June 15th. What does justice look like for a bunch of, how can I put this in your language? Baby-killing Babylonians. This big network of, I don't know how else better to put it. What does justice look like for this class of people pulling the strings?
Answer that quite quickly. I mean, we're setting the ITNJ up, and ITNJ stands for the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. We've spent some years engineering this. Anyone can look at www.itnj.org now. We formally launch it on the 15th of June this year, which is the 800th anniversary of the signing of Magna Carta. We have the first ceremonial seating of the tribunal at that time. We've already appointed the Chief Justice, Sir John Walsh of Branner, one of the world's foremost constitutional scholars, a remarkable human being, and a man who understands full well the Babylonian priesthood stuff that we're talking about here. He's a remarkable and very sagacious man, and we are very blessed to have him as our Chief Justice. I've known Sir John Walsh for many years. We've worked together. We've been in a couple of dangerous situations together. He's an elderly man, and he's just remarkable. We've got our prosecutors. We've got our FBI investigators. We've got remarkable people coming onto the Law Commission. All of this will be unveiled on the 15th of June in the ceremonial seating. To answer the question, Brian, the tribunal is set up now as the people's jurisdiction around the world. Living men, living women can now take to task the fictions, the oath keepers who are standing out of oath, the public elected officials who are standing out of their oaths, the judges and officials who are standing out of honor in law can also be brought before this court and will be brought before this court. And this is not a Kevin Annett type court, which is you can't quite ever find or touch or feel. No disrespect, I'm not too sure what that scenario is, but I know a fair bit about the controversy, which is largely connected to the fact that no one can seem to touch it or see it or find it anywhere. But this is going to be a court which is very much in the public domain. In fact, we're launching a very advanced online voting technology also on the 15th of June so that we can have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people around the world participating in the open trials as the tribunals begin to do their tasking. And those people will not be able to interfere with the decisions of the judges, but we can build up a consensual field to see if the people of the world and their opinions on what's being revealed or adjudicated in the courtrooms is coherent to the zeitgeist. We want to see if judges and the prosecution counsel and the defense counsels are asking the right questions, are answering the right questions. We want to see what that feedback looks like. Courtrooms need to have the walls torn down. We don't want jungle, we don't want to create a jungle scenario where people are, interposing in the sanctity of jurisprudence. That needs to be undertaken in a very sober and intelligent environment, and we're going to ensure that integrity. We are effectively staging the tribunals and the courtrooms in a very traditional sense, with prosecution and defense appointed to those who don't step before the court when they're summoned. And if they don't, we will be passing judgments, and those judgments will ultimately be enforceable, in some cases through Interpol, and if Interpol do not play ball, then they will be standing outside of their law remit, and we will then be prosecuting the Interpol as necessary, as an institution which is also abrogating or derogating law. So there's really no wriggle room with the way that we've been establishing the International Tribunal. I am probably the most ignorant person on the team in law, so I don't wish to speak to it. We have world experts there, and I have nothing to do with the way things are really moving forward, other than being a rabble-rouser and having founded the ITNJ as a necessary a platform that has to now emerge. to narrow down the answer to the question yet further for you, Brian, we've got private attorney general workshops and training about to begin in the next few weeks, okay? We have congressionally approved and accredited private attorney general Rod Class working with us, and Rod Class will be training up to 1,000 private attorney generals in the United States in the course of the next 2 or 3 years. Now, a private attorney general, as you may or may not know, is the last chance saloon. Those are the cats who are entitled to go and arrest the judges when the judges are not doing what judges are meant to do. So you've got 3,400 some judges in the United States, of which arguably 98, 99% are operating in treason and in fraud. That is a fairly reasonable statement, given the state of jurisprudence in the United States today, which is fundamentally a commercial enterprise. You've got 3,400 cashiers working for the House of Rothschild franchise in the United States. 1,000 private attorney generals.
The reason why I asked, I was
rounding up, backed up by people, backed up by living men and women.
Yeah. Right,
for any of the listeners or watchers.
Hold on.
Yeah. Go check out the website. I dug into it today. Hold on real quick. And I also watched one of the Rod Class interviews, which was extremely interesting. And I also signed the ITNJ petition. Well, I guess what I really want to know, I mean, it's a much, based on the research that I've done so far and what I've seen, it's extremely needed. The response that everybody is already coming with right now is going to be similar to what we got when we were involved in all the OPPT stuff, and it's all going to be revolved around enforcement. You know, where's the enforcement going to come from? And you know, you just addressed that in regards to the Interpol. I'm wondering where all the manpower is going to come from, because you know, you could hire 10% of the world's population, and you could do trials every single day for the rest of eternity, and not everybody is going to be able to stand trial for their crimes against humanity, because there's just been so many. I guess just to kind of dial it away from the legal lawful aspect. You
create moratorium. Hold your thought. Let me answer to that. It's important. You create moratoria. Yeah. You have to create moratoria to allow truth and reconciliation commissions, every town hall on the planet, every cadet room, every Boy Scouts, workshop should be turned over to truth and reconciliations. Moratoriums have got to be established. You know, this is the absolution principle ultimately, because you say, you know, tens of millions of people have been functionaries of the diabolical construct, and that is perfectly true. But there's very, very few, realistically speaking, who are responsible for having engineered this consciously into the paradigm. And those deviants are the ones that need to be routed out, absolutely. But the others need to be brought forward, be able to come forward. Right now, you have got veterans in the United States, servicemen and servicewomen in the United States of America are going to be the ones who turn this game around. They're the ones who need our love, need our support, need our empathy, need our forgiveness. Because they're the ones who are going to be the line in the sand that turn the corner. And that's going to happen between now and the third quarter of 2017 without any shadow of doubt. Third quarter of 2017 is D-Day. We get over that node point, we're out. Clear.
There's that year again, Lisa.
Yeah.
Just saying. Go ahead, Mel.
Brian, I'm actually more interested in your specific point of what does justice look like in a new paradigm? Because for me, having worked with, and I have worked with a number of groups or organizations, some of them not too successful, and obviously they're all good because I learned what not to do and where not to go and how not to go about things in order to try and create a better option. And, you know, we had Rod Class on a little while ago, and one of the things he said was, what does this look like? For me, I don't want to create the same paradigm as we have at the moment, where we punish people, take away their freedoms and their liberties by sticking them in jail and doing all that kind of stuff. So how do we go about creating a new paradigm? And I had to laugh because I don't know whether Rob was being serious or not. He said, but can you imagine someone like George Bush or Dick Cheney in an orange jumpsuit having to crawl through Angola and pull the landmines out the ground? Because that's the kind of jobs we're going to give those guys. They're going to clean up the mess that they've created. And for me, again, not wishing to sort of create old paradigm punishment and retribution, because I think, again, that just plays into the whole someone's got control and other people will suffer, rightfully or wrongly.
Yes.
I do think that they have to clean up their mess, and that's going to be a messy job, perhaps hazardous, but they should do it. And that is, for me, what justice looks like in the new paradigm.
I suggest you're absolutely right. One always wants to look at the circle that has been most affected. You have to define the primary, secondary, and tertiary circles of influence within the field of expression of those individuals that have been impacted by their negative conduct. And that's a fairly straightforward process. Again, truth and reconciliation is really geared towards defining that, and then allow for those people most impacted to be the ones to determine. But if one allows for vengeance and bloodlust to contaminate the source code of a new era of jurisprudence, we've really failed the litmus.
Yes, hang on.
Well,
and this is
I'm glad that you went there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mel. Finish.
I beg your pardon. I think there's a bit of delay with us there. I said that for me is, what is the option? I mean, how do we approach this with a new paradigm and actually actively go about removing the pernicious malevolence that exists without becoming that thing? And I'm really interested to see how the greatest thought makers, you, Sacha, and all the beautiful people we work with, come up with these beautiful solutions. You know, because there are solutions for everything. There's a solution for everything. You just got to find the I suppose, fairest and most just way to go about administering all things. And even then, we're going to get it wrong sometimes, and we have to make allowances for that, because we're all on this path of discovery together.
Yeah.
I think you ask any parent and they'll say the same thing.
Yeah.
Tell the kids to clean up their own fucking mess.
I agree. I'm glad you covered that, Mel, because that's actually what I was getting at. I was kind of curious what justice looked like, not even through the eyes of the ITNJ, but through the eyes of Sacha Stone. You know that I'm fascinated by you, man, and I'm just kind of curious how you see it. But you know that I tell you that all the time, because we're both involved together. The question, when I watched your Teal Scott interview, is that her last name? Scott?
Swan.
Scott. Teal Swan. And I watched it today, and it was extreme. It's really very intriguing. One of the things that she said,
"Who's got the barking dog?"
Someone's got a barking dog there, but I can't hear anything.
It's really loud, and I can't hear myself think. One of the things that she said that I found extremely interesting, and I wrote it down, is she said that the way that they recruit people, I think the barking dog might be on my end. The way that they recruit people into the occultism is they play into their lost sense of connection and their need for significance, and that through their eyes they think that they're actually working for the light, for the highest good. And so, what does rehabilitation look like in regards to helping them to overcome that? I mean, the programming on their end is just as thick, if not thicker, as far as I can see it, as it is for the mass populace of sleeping souls. So there's got to be, I'm just curious what that rehabilitation process looks like, because it seems to me, based on what I've seen, that process just doesn't exist in our reality yet. Or if it does, it flies way under the radar. And if anything, it's going to be something that becomes more part of the mainstream. So what do you have to say about that?
It exists at the individual level, not yet at the collective level. An individual is able to navigate those subtle realms again, and this is the inner scape, the inner landscape of being. One is able as an individual to engage empathy and absolution to the extent that you literally open your heart center as wide as it'll go, and you can take on board that stuff and work with it. That's the real alchemy of being, and the real alchemy of relationship is engaged with those principles. At the collective level, we're still infantile or even Neanderthal because of the interposition of insectoidal galactic intelligences on us over a long span of time. And we still have trace element of that insectoidal drone mind, a propensity hardwired into the human genome. Again, individually, we can flush that out. At the collective level, it's improbable and almost impossible, which is why it is so terribly important that each of us learn the art of the wisdom of insecurity and stop really giving the proverbial fuck about what people think about us. We really must learn to identify actuated self. And that means becoming sometimes lost to your own family, your own community, and becoming ostracized and becoming an outcast. How blessed are you when you become that kind of an outcast? So empathy can work, but really at this stage, the mechanics of empathy and absolution are something which are known to the awakened individual. Once we break through the threshold and that becomes part of the collective technology, that is going to be an extraordinarily beautiful thing. And that, frankly, is what all of us brings us together as tribe, is that we are all of us blindly fumbling in the dark to try to cohere that collective awakening so that we can actuate the collective capacity to empathize, to absolve, and to thereby transcend all the horrors of reality, transmute them thereafter into the patterns of perfection, which are waiting in abeyance for us and have been since the year dot. That's where we're at right now. You ask me as a living man, how do I absolve somebody who has ritually sacrificed 36 infants in the last 20 years, and that being is standing before me? I have had such beings in front of me. Absolution is the 0 point. The same Rubicon that Lisa was talking about earlier, which is the alpha and the omega. It is the departure point from the old entropic paradigm into the new neg-entropic, life-affirming, so-called fifth dimensional paradigm. That 0 point is absolution in and of itself. It is absolute. It is not by degrees. So I'm afraid to say that one can and must absolve absolutely the entity standing before you in the here and now. But that is only something you can engage with in the here and now. It's not something you can proselytize. It's not something you can prognosticate. It's not something you can write down and codify and then sell as a manual or a handbook to others. This is the real technology of being. Absolution.
Really? I had a $9.95 tag on that on Amazon.
I read it on Kindle.
No, I was all ready to go.
Yesterday.
You just have to do it, Brian. You have to do it. You have to absolve whatever's in front of you. Because remember this, that whatever manifests on your radar screen in front of you is absolutely what is meant to be there in front of you. Because you are the perfect coherence answer to that phenomenon, whatever it is. And you must always be in absolute truth. You must always be in a state of absolution and empathy.
Oh,
there's a perfect spin on New Age bullshit.
Yeah,
I just got to.
Yeah, I see. Hold on, really quick. This is my last comment on this. I've been quiet the whole first hour. I've been building up.
You've been dying, haven't you?
Here's a soapbox.
Yeah, no, this has been a fascinating. I mean, I've been spectator to one of the coolest conversations I've definitely had, at least all week. I agree. I agree that absolution is the 0 point. And I'm, like I talked about in that conversation that we had on the New Age bullshit, that when people are sincerely sorry for what they've done, I'm always the first person to forgive them. It's the ones that aren't really sorry for what they've done that we forgive.
Stop, Brian. Stop, brother.
No.
Wrong way round.
No, let me just finish my thought here.
You're the one who opens that capacity for them.
Let me just finish my thought. Hold on. Let me just finish my thought really quickly here. I'm speaking on behalf of the listeners right now. This isn't even necessarily coming from me. They're going to wonder if the archonic influence and that sociopathic, deep psychopathic programming that goes to the core, not to the essence, but to the core. If that is insurmountable, if that is healable, if they are even able to get to a place where they are capable of being able to come through that fog and come out on the other side as a healed soul, ready to step back into the Homo sapien domain, to live amongst the we are all and all is one and everything is all connected environment of where we know that we are all headed. That is what everybody is going to be concerned about, that baby killer that killed 36 children.
I understand that. I understand that. And that creature will be will determine for itself. That creature will determine for itself whether it is moving toward the light, which is going to burn like hell. It's going to hurt like hell. If you were standing, Brian, fully actuated in the empathic zone in front of that creature of darkness, and you project towards that being, no judgment whatsoever, only embracing that horrific creature with the empathic wave, let me tell you what happens at the superdimensional mechanical level. What happens is you invite that entity for the first time in its expression towards light, towards the reversal of that paradigm. That hurts like hell. That is the worst punishment you can ever give that creature, because that's a flame that will burn it so fucking deep and hard. And yet, that is the flame of forgiveness that will bring it toward the light. So that creature will hurt by virtue of the degree of empathy you extend toward it. Now, conversely, if you stand in front of that creature and you extend your judgment and you extend your damnation of that creature, you will feed the neg-entropic elements that actually empower that creature. This is a horrific mathematic, the mathematics of grace that you and I, my friend, have got to engage with if we truly want to enter the superconscious, okay? This is the beauty of it. It's as hard for you as it is for that creature to exert the empathy that is needed to absolve that creature. And yet, that is our divine function. It's why we are here.
This is my response to that. I couldn't agree more, man. That's a question well answered. Thank you.
Here's the thing.
Go on, Mel.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay.
Hang on. We're all trying to talk at once.
Go ahead,
So let's do Mel, then D,
Go
then
ahead,
me.
Lisa, Mel, and D.
Okay, I'll have a bash then. Okay. I don't normally, I try always when dealing in the public realm or putting information out to go by evidence with everything that I do. And it's not very common for me ever to wax lyrically about, and I do talk privately with people like Lisa, and I have had conversations with Dee and alluded to in an email with Sacha about the ultimate depth core level of what is really going on. And what I have found from my own experience, and I can only ever talk from personal experience, is that when you are in that purpose path, just to simplify it, you're fulfilling that role that you chose when you're incarnated in here, and I know that I am, and that comes with a great deal of what's actually the ostracization, the suffering. Like my family think I'm absolutely crazy, you know, and I'm probably the smartest one out of all of them. You know, we're and this is, you know, for me to sit down on a Sunday morning and sit with you guys, it is like sitting with my family, because you're about the only people in the world who properly understand the reality, contexts, but when Brian talk about, I've had to deal with Sacha with a lot of things that have come up that are negative, and I've had to go to him and go, Sacha, have you seen this? Okay, process it the way you want, don't mind if you're an accident. For me, it's just a case of being aware of what works and what doesn't, not judging it, okay? But I ultimately am orientated I'm in solution mode. I really want to create solutions. What I've realized is when you get into that space, that even the darkness serves you. Let me tell you, I've had people come along to completely fuck with me like you have no idea. And in the end, they've just ended up serving me much to their own detrimental agenda. And that's the beauty of it, is that when you're on this path, okay, they can't touch you. Really, they can't. They have. Believe me, they've come for us in a big way so many times, actually, spiritually, physically, law enforcement, you name it. I didn't even get behind bars when the police came for me. I was so disappointed because, you know why? I engaged with them on, you know, what is your oath and a bond all about? To protect and serve the public. They didn't even have the balls to put me behind bars because they knew I was right. They knew they were just serving as glorified debt collectors because that's what I informed them, and they knew that. And that, you know what, when I left the police station, just talking on a physical level, I shook their hands. That was probably, you know, we don't refer to as a dark experience. They looked me in the eye, shook my hand. There was a moment between us where I knew at that moment, even the darkness serves us. You know what? It's the shift. It's so evident. I think also, you notice a lot in Holland, I'm coming across more and more people, particularly who are enforcers, people, tram ticket inspectors will come onto the tram. And you'll say to them, well, technically, you can't enforce any penalty on me. You know, you don't have the right to. And they go, oh, yeah, you're one of those. Should we dab it up? And I went, you know, kind of thing. More and more people are becoming aware of this. And, you know, hate to use the buzzword critical mass, but it is a case of it's coming. It's coming so quickly. And I refuse to make myself small for others who refuse to grow. Because I know, no matter what anybody tells me, no matter how many people try to pull me into their direction, because there's so many people who want me to be the voice of their thing and the face of their movement. And I've had so many people. I've had that with Kevin Allen. I've had it with so many people. Ultimately, even if you have to go on that experience, and you guys went on a little bit of a roundabout experiences yourself, those things serve you, whether it's just to give you grounds or strength or knowledge of what not to do or where not to go. That's very, very important. Yeah? And again, that's the only thing I can say, Brian, to that is when you're faced with these people, and I've had to look some of the biggest monsters in the eye, I have to agree with Sacha, the only way to combat it is to extend empathy, love, and forgiveness. And I think that is what we're here to learn. For me, my lessons here, tolerance, patience, and forgiveness. And I try to work on that every day because I tell you, running a network, you need a lot of that.
Yeah, your turn. I'll go next.
I need to put this in here because while Brian's speaking for some of the people, I'm going to speak for some of the other people. Because it's very difficult sometimes for people to understand, because I get what Sacha and Mel are talking about. I get it. But there's a lot of people out there who are going to hear those words and think that means that plays into that new age paradigm of like, oh, send them their love. You have to love the bad guys because they need your love. And there's a lot of people who are going to go, I don't fucking think so. Now, this is where I come from, because I'm a vindictive bitch. I'm sorry, it just is what I am. And I get that
Dee, we're about to lose Sacha, so
oh, okay.
Get to the point.
I'm sorry, I'm really trying to come to here's the thing. My point is this, is that when you're dealing with beings who are, in some ways, in a lot of ways, overshadowed by these, whatever you want to call them, archons, divines, etc., there is a point when they make a choice. Either go into the light, as we talked about, or not. And at that point, if they're making a choice that they're not going to play nicely with all the other kids in the playground, then something has to be done. And that is one of my things.
I don't think it's up to. I don't think it's going to be us that does it.
No, it's not going to be us that does it. It's not going to be us that does it. This is Death Star mechanics. This is Death Star mechanics. Space dust. You either move through the Rubicon toward the light when that very last clarion call comes and you're invited into that vibral pathway, or you're consigned to space dust. And that is where we're at right now. All of those sentient beings are variously participating in the great alchemical bifurcation of this quadrant of the entire universe. And they know it. It is why the CERN conversation is so important, such a critical conversation, and how discerning we are being about that conversation. It really is important, because those Babylonian ritualistic exercises, the magic has got to be amped up to the max for these deviants to succeed. And as we pointed out, they're failing every single time. Every single ritual is dissolving into chaos. None of these exercises are gaining any traction, because there is nothing left in the ethers. The building blocks of our reality are changing at such an inordinate rate of knots, courtesy of the photonic band and and the fact that we've moved through that Rubicon in the spiral of Alcyon. We're now beyond the remit of those old Draco etheric elements. So again, and divine majesty, which is absolution, empathy, and perfect expression. It's all we should be focusing ourselves on.
Yes, but that
Sacha?
was the fact of it's not a matter of letting them off scot-free.
No, you don't need to. They're consigning themselves to space dust. Sit back and watch the firework display, D. In the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see some extraordinary things happen to these creatures, and you'll have nothing to do with it. Neither will I. These universal laws are about to be activated. And it's going to be a great...
I got to say, I fucking love fireworks.
Back and relax.
Fucking
You know,
love
the
fireworks, man.
Everybody
Just
has
saying.
addressed everything else that you said, so I'm going to address the one last thing that really caught me, which is when you said, and this is where I said New Age meme, that whenever anything comes into your sphere of influence, whenever anything comes into your sphere of observation, the New Age bullshit is that it's because you resonate with that to some degree. You attracted that because that's a, you know, if you see rape and murder and, you know, mayhem and war, it's because it's within you and you need to address it within you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your comment just blew that one wide open, which is because you're the perfect conduit to neutralize that situation.
Yes, that is the core.
I believe that so completely, because time and time again in the last few years, I have been witness to and experienced things up close and personal that there is no, and I've looked because I bought into the New Age bullshit meme. Where is that within me? And I was really tough on myself, and I couldn't friggin' find it. And I was as honest with myself as I could possibly be. And I was like, that's not what this is about. And I would do exactly what you did. I was like, okay, I don't like it. This is not where I'm resonating. What do I do about it? And after I've, you know, pulled myself to pieces and dissected myself and dragged myself through the depths of analytical hell, I then get to that place and then project that this is actually because I can neutralize, I can heal, I can do whatever to this situation. And that's one of the New Age memes that I think needs to be absolutely dissected and thrown out and stumbled on and through the trash can, because people have been so much guilt and so much distraction and so much harm has been done by that meme.
Yeah.
If you observe it, it's because it's you. It's a reflection of you. Yeah, it's one of those ones that gets me.
It's
So
victim, right? It's
totally.
Got raped because she was wearing a short skirt.
Yeah, she was asking for it. I mean, that's what it boils down
Hey guys,
to.
we should probably let Sacha go
Yes, we should.
so he doesn't get the actual boot, like literally, out of the cafe. Hey, I just gotta say that whoever's in that cafe got quite the show this evening here in Bali. I can't even imagine what they're thinking over there on that.
I'm sure I've interfered with at least 24 people and their tranquility. So.
Sacha, we miss you. You gotta come back.
See, I'll be back in just over a week, Mel. I'll be back in London, so I look forward to speaking to you then.
Wonderful. Look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Sacha. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks, Dee. Thanks, Mel and Biggie. And Brian, I'll be seeing you quick smart tomorrow, my friend. Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye now.
Thanks, Sacha.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Oh.
Holy cow.
No, this
Nothing like a quick catch up with
Great
Sacha,
talk.
is there?
Hi, family.
Hi guys. Okay, I hope you don't stop recording because this is we're still going.
I just want to say something because I want to bring this back. Mel has launched a new show on CCN called Dragonology, and her first show was this week. And I know you guys didn't get a chance to catch it. Nick and I did. It is my new favorite show ever. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be putting it out and getting everyone to watch it. I went all over viral, all over Facebook and Skype during the show, going, you got to go watch the show. And I want to talk to Mel and bring this up because this is part of what we're discussing is that draconian, and that occult use of words and the etymology of the words. Oh, Mel, you fucking blew my mind. And one of the
Thank you, Brian.
Mel got into the discussion of the word "the," which means God.
Which word? Sorry.
The.
The.
The. T-H-E.
The. Okay.
The. And one of
Is
the.
Mel going to get closer to the camera, or is it?
I think she's going to go grab something, and she's like, "Okay."
Getting my books.
But one of the things,
I'm coming, guys. I'm just
go into this. But one of the things that was really, really big for me was when she started talking about the words that use that "the." So theology, okay, we get it, right? Theology, every religion. The one that got me was thesaurus.
Oh.
And I had this massive, huge, like, holy fuck, because that whole John 1 verse 1, and the word was God, and the word was with God, and
the
which is words. And I want to talk about that aspect of the ritual usage that we have going on, and we see perpetuated continuously. So now, go.
okay. What? With everything, I like to give context. One of the reasons, I guess, I'm interested in this stuff, as you guys have recently discovered, is part of. I've experienced some pretty nasty stuff in my life, and I try to make sense of what it all means, and kind of realize how the issues and things that I've had are actually issues that everybody has. And it's, part of the root, dark, pernicious malevolence at the heart of all the shit that's going on in the world. So again, tying into what we said, what we experience, what we project is what we focus on. This is why I've come into this area of, it's not I'm actually I'm a pretty light and pleasant person in general. I like to laugh and whatnot, but I actually enjoy looking into the dark, into occultism and into all this sort of stuff, because it sheds light on things from my own aspect in reality. And I showed this book on the presentation I did, which is Encyclopedia of Mythology. And for me, this is the biggest evidence of anything that I've ever could show anybody of how far back my interest in this stuff goes. And this I bought in 1995 a second-hand bookshop in my hometown when I was in college. And basically, I left this behind when I went to London in 1999. In 2010, I rediscovered it on my mom's shelf. And what it said to me was, I have always been into this stuff on one level or another. I don't even know why I bought this when I was in college. It wasn't anything I was studying. I worked through it. I made notes. And I worked through it again when I got it back in later years. But what has become very evident to me is that the way we speak and communicate is our power. That is where our power lies, okay? If none of us spoke, communicated, or wrote, none of us would know each other. None of us would be doing what we're doing. That is our power. It's the sound, it's the voice, it's the articulation, it's the word, okay? And with that in mind, we need to look at the words we're using, because we have been caught in spells through our words. And indeed, if you want me to focus particularly on the, it's an incredibly interesting aspect, or I can go to some others as well, because the the etymology works is pretty frightening. And when you look at how many of our basic words are actually what I call dragon words or serpentine etymology. And what they've done is basically they've taken most of our words and just put random words into the way we construct sentences so that it's their words. It's a word that references dragon or serpent. So we're constantly talking about our controllers, and thus they control our language, okay? You're constantly focusing energy into that specific thing through what you're saying, even if you're not aware that you're saying it, all right? You're feeding them energy, and it's done without us even knowing about it through our language, which is why it's so important to change our language. Now let's talk about the word the, T-H-E. The word the pretty much starts the beginning of every single sentence. For example, the man crossed the road, unless you're using the indefinite reference of a man crossed the road. Now, both important, the and a. They don't seem to have much function other than to reference a subject prior to a subject being mentioned in a sentence. So basically it would go, the man being the subject. What is the real function of the, or what is the real function of a? Now you spoke about alpha, all right? Alpha takes alphabet, right? First letter of the alphabet, alpha top first comes first, number one position, okay? The alpha in position. You look at the letter A. What is the letter A? Capital letter A is the pyramid with the eye and the capstone, which is removed. Okay, that is what the capital letter A is. Yeah, if you want to see more examples of this, see Chasing the Dragons, my documentary. But so you're using A, for example, at the beginning of a sentence, or the. So what is the? The is the Greek word for God. Theoi, which is T-H-O-I, is plural, it's the gods. All right, so the fits into words like Pantheon, which was the home of the gods, Parthenon, the home of Athena. In fact, the word Athena has the in it. Athens, named after Athena, has the in it. And it goes on and on and on. But you have a number of very interesting words which come up, which ultimately reference the dragon. It's all about dragon worship. Everything we say is in homage to the dragon. Okay, it's like our entire language is based around anything that evolved from Latin, which evolved from the ancient Greek, okay, is basically evolved as a serpentine language. And here's a very good book to read if you're interested in reading more about this. And this is a book that's not one you can go through slowly. It took me 2 years to read this book. And I mean, I would go back and read and reread, and I've become an expert in every aspect of this book. Pierceback, The Murder of Reality. Okay. Highly recommend it. It's got a lot of Neil Haig's illustrations, and yeah, Neil Haig is obviously the guy who does David Icke's illustrations. But this is just an incredible, and it's not the only one I've used. I've gone through, this was a conduit in to this line of work, which then got me covered in lots of different manuscripts, artworks, bits and pieces, doing all this kind of research. But I'll take you through a few really interesting serpent words if you're interested in kind of getting how pernicious this is. And I mentioned earlier, we're talking with Sacha, the word spiro, okay? Spiro basically means dragon. I'll take you all the variations that come from spiro. For example, when I did the presentation, I said the word arc.
Mel,
yeah?
before you go on too far, can you tell me why they all mean dragon? Because how does V and A and Spyro, how do they all connect to the dragon? Let's start there.
Well, that's what they mean. I mean, in other languages, before they became in English. So you've got to understand where our English language came from. The word English, okay, actually comes from England. How was England named? England was named after it was Angli or Anglo, or it was A-N-G-A-L, okay, or Anglo. Angui or Anguien is the Latin word for dragon. The biblical angels, yeah, are...
So, hang on. So what you're saying is that all these words that you're going to reference, when you trace them back, are all different names in Greek or Latin for dragon.
Greek, Latin, Aramaic, I think I've got about 20 different languages that we use. And I can give you the root languages to tell you what they are.
But I just want to lay that out there for, people who have not looked at etymology at all. They're going to, the first question is, how does that relate to dragons?
Well, first thing to understand is
English is a created language of
yes.
all the languages. It's not like, Aramaic or even Greek.
I get that it's a younger. I know that it's the youngest language.
It is. It's a create, and it's been. The more you look into it, the more you realize it's been specifically created for a purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Everything that came out of the Latin language, so anything that's European language, basically, that came from Latin using the Roman alphabet. Roman language, when Rome conquered Greece, they took the Greek language, so it comes from ancient Greece. Now, the ancient Greek language, lots of Aramaic, lots of much older languages in that one as well. And I can't break that down past those letterings, but I can trace pretty much everything back to the ancient Greek language from our current state. Just a very good question there about English, okay? If you take the word English and you write it down and you take the word for English and Dutch, or Afrikaans, which is a variation of Dutch, that is Engels. You're speaking Engels. Now, what is the word for angel in Dutch or Afrikaans? Engel. It's the same word. So English is the language of the angels, and the biblical angels are angui or anguiem, which are dragons. That's a Latin word for serpents or dragons. Right? That's where you get anguish and anger come from that root as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me start for another interesting one. Pala. Pala is the root word of palace, Palestine. Okay. Pala, basically, Los Palamos, anything with Pala in it is referencing certain
Including Parliament?
Parliament.
Parliament.
I'm trying to think of some other good ones for you. Now, I'll get on to that, but Pala actually extends into the word pure, P-E-O-R, all right? And pure then becomes a synonym for pear. Now, you find apples and pears are synonymous, and they come up everywhere in serpent symbolism, okay? Apples and pears, you'll find a lot of pears used in place of serpents on places like shields, on heraldry displays, on people's family crests, and that is a symbol of the serpent, much like the apple and the golden apple in Greek mythology. Those two are representative of serpentine mythology, of the hidden knowledge, of the knowledge that they withheld. It can also be representative of sacrifice in human flesh, because of course it's something that you eat symbolically. And that was, again, the whole purpose of taking in blood and flesh from the Eucharist, is to obtain that energetic knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment. Okay, the other really important one for you guys to be aware of is the Colo root. So that's C-L-O-U. Hold on, Bubba, you go. Okay. Colo root, C-O-L-U. And that can also be Kulu, that's C-U-L-U. That can be Kula, as in Dracula, that's C-U-L-A. Okay, and that is the Kolo, Kulu root. Now you find that in Columbus. It is the root of clouds, which is why you find a lot of clouds in the classical architecture. Clouds, again, symbolic of the serpent. Okay, columns, as I spoke about earlier. Columbia, Mother Goddess. Columbus. Christopher Columbus was not, that's not his real name, it was Christopher Collins. Columbus was given to him so everybody knew who the hell he was and what the hell he was doing, those initiated ones. And also one of the reasons why you often find doves in ancient Christian pictures and old art and sculpture is because doves in French is colombe, which is basically...
You say doves?
Doves. Birds.
Birds. Yeah, okay.
They're a column in French, which also means serpent. It's another word for serpent. So that's why they use the doves. Always you see the holy dove, okay, the holy dove window at the Vatican. Yes, that is all representative of the serpent. When they open up the doves to fly, that's all releasing the dragon, the white doves at ceremonies. That is what
so can I just ask, like, the point of all this is to basically ingrain homage to the dragon, to the serpent in our daily lives, in our daily language, so that we are constantly calling on that energy and paying homage to that energy. Is that what you're saying?
Everything is about that. Everything is about energetic vibration.
Go ahead. I just have, real quick, let me just throw this in as a dovetail to her question, doesn't it? Where does intent come into all of this? It's like, okay, now that I know the word the and all the uses of the word the, if I'm not you know, if there's no intention, like how do I redesign what I'm saying to take out these words that are used, you know, every other 7 words I say you know, I just, you know, it's not going to come out of my vocabulary anytime soon.
The fact that you even talk is a dragon thing. You're not even meant to talk. You're not meant to look at each other and know what we're saying. That is the way it's meant to be. Yeah?
So
we're meant to be connected to each other. We're all one. We're not meant to be verbalizing what we say. The art of speaking and writing was started by the dragons. That I can prove too. Categorically prove it. And if you go through my series on dragonology with me, you'll see it's undeniable. They invented meat eating, fishing, hunting, cooking, okay, all the things that are processing and putting bad stuff into us, all right? They invented arts, glass making. They invented writing, literature. They gave us our religion, structures of government. Everything we understand is a modern day culture, all right? Culture is a reason, right? Culture is because we've been cultured in a petri dish like bacteria by these guys. We're nothing but a culture of their culture. That's it. That's everything. That's every aspect of culture. And if you don't believe me, let's take all the things that we. All right, let's take all the things we love. We don't have to even go into. You guys know Hollywood.
But hang on. But let's just go back to, we may well be all those things.
Yeah.
But as we said earlier, and as Sacha said earlier, we agreed to be.
Yeah.
And we came here to be that culture in the dish. So there's no blame. There's no guilt. There's no anger. There's no need to feel like a victim that you're a culture in a dish because you chose to be. So
here's my answer. Vow of silence. Done. I'm done. No more talking for me ever.
No more
okay, so you're no more Skype. Awesome.
Finished. I'm moving to Tibet. It'll be much easier there. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with it.
No,
Well, I totally
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
get. Oh, go on. No, go on, Dee. Go on.
No, go ahead, Lisa. I was just about to start rambling.
Yeah, me too. So, you know, take your pick.
If I just finish that thought there, have a look at every aspect of our culture. Have a look at every aspect of what we consider culture. Anything you consider as auxiliary to yourself to entertain your mind, be it football, be it music, be it theatre, be it arts. Every single auxiliary aspect used as supposed culture outside of yourself as an expression through which we entertain or interact is from them, the dragons, the archons, whoever that element is, whatever that element is.
I would argue that a little bit. I would argue that in the sense that we are, I believe, absolutely creative and expressive beings.
Yes.
And that things like art and sculpture and music are inherent to us, but that they have been absolutely hijacked, manipulated, and directed. I mean, you can take rap music as the classic example. You know, I mean, that evolved from music from the African Americans in the US, right? And it went through a process of evolution, and it got to a point in the late 70s, early 80s where it was an amazing expression, self-expression, and they were exposing a great deal. When rap first started, they were talking about truth. They were talking about the control system. They were exposing a lot. And the whole thing got absolutely hijacked and steered. And it didn't take that long before the only thing that you're writing about, the guys were writing about shooting people, gangs, colours, rape, being a boss, you know, fucking look at me. And all the girls sing about is how fuckable they are.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what it devolved into. And we know there's a huge story behind that. Brian blogged all about that on his website way back. And if anyone wants to look into it about what happened to rap music, they can do it on his blog. But that's, to me, it's not so much that it's implemented or even imposed on us or introduced by them, because I think there's so much of that is absolutely creative spark that comes from the human nature, but it's definitely manipulated, co-opted, hijacked, controlled.
Yeah.
That would be my argument to that.
I would agree with you, Lisa. I mean, I'm an artist. I've been painting since the age of 11. I had my first gallery exhibition with people who are 80 at the age of 11. Right? My paintings were there and people have been exhibiting their whole life. And I was like, oh my God, this is a little tiny town in South Africa as well. And just the only thing, good thing my mom ever did for me was take me out of school for art, because I was quite advanced with everybody else, and give me private art lessons. The best thing she ever did. Now, I didn't go and start painting, serpents and people killing each other and whatnot. However, if you go and look at the history of art, I studied art history to death, and you go and look at all the big paintings in the Louvre, it's a lot of rituals, a lot of baby killing, it's a lot of all of this kind of stuff. And basically, the grand masters, the ones who were funded by the rich black nobility families into the art guilds, were the ones who then went to paint propaganda pieces. This is before we had television and graphic arts where we could create propaganda and marketing. Art was marketing. That's how you got people to understand the representation of the way Jesus is in the Constantinian version, not, worshipping the pagan icons when that was kind of outlawed. They did that through giving people a whole bunch of well-painted artwork to visualize as to how it should be. That's what I mean by the whole thing has been hijacked. Yeah, we're innately creative people. We all have creative expression. And we've probably got a lot of art forms that have been suppressed that we've never been allowed to manifest because of it's all been pigeonholed into, okay, art with a paintbrush, art with a, this kind of thing. Yeah. However, I would say the arts, the practice of writing and recording on a paper or carving into a wall, that is distinctly, provably, traceably comes from the reptilian dragon. Draconian influence. We had an oral tradition as human beings prior to that. It was never necessary for us to take our word and deaden it into something. The need to actually record the tradition came about when they started to rewrite our history. Okay, and how better to create history than carve it in stone? You know?
Oh, okay. Hang on.
Right? Isn't it funny how we see these ancient cave paintings that are suddenly being discovered? And it's the same thing. If you know something's going on, you go and you paint the history of what happened in some dark cave where it'll be protected, almost like as a passing down the message through time. Not painted right on the front of a rock wall out in the sun, out where it would be publicly seen, but in a cave where it's.
This gets back to what I was saying before. Okay, now there's a whole conversation that the audience wasn't privy to before we started recording. Okay.
Yeah.
And what you just said tied into that.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit. Okay, now I want to put this out there simply because I want the feedback. Because, the feedback I got already was confirmation in terms of the people I've literally spoken to, but I'd like to get it bigger than that. So if everybody will indulge me for a second, I'm just going to recap, right? Because most of the people listening to this show will have also been listening to last week's show, right? So they will have had the journey with us, right? Okay, so for those of you who saw it, many of you would have my interview with Mark Sargent. There, very briefly, he ran off a couple of films where everybody should watch. One of them was Dark City. I'd never seen it personally, so I put it on my to-do list, and I hadn't seen it. Then we do last week's One People show, which was last Tuesday. That was turned into an amazing 3-hour conversation, and at least for those of us who were on it, and I hope for those who were watching, it was an amazing conversation, really juicy conversation, left us all on a high. But I would like for those of you who are listening now those who listened then to think back to last Tuesday when you were listening to that show, if you were listening to it live, and then what happened for the rest of the day or evening for you. Because what happened for me was leaving that show on a real high, and it was 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. But through the course of the day, a sense of being incredibly rushed, just busy, rushed, started to build over the course of the day. Wednesday, it actually built up. Now, I know for most of the audience, I'm probably a day ahead.
I was just going to, side note, she's in Australia. She's a day ahead of us.
I'm in Australia. So the show for me is on, Tuesday morning. So by Wednesday, that sense of being rushed turned into almost panic and overwhelm. By Thursday, it was really bad. By Friday, even out and about in the public, I could see that people were just closed off. They were totally, I don't know, the difference between Thursday and Friday out in the general public was huge. What I also saw, and I personally, and I do apologize to Mel and Biggie, because you guys caught me on Friday night, when I was in the worst of this. And there was this huge build-up over the course of the week of anything Matrix related. And by that I mean law, anything to do with the legal profession, taxation, immigration, visas and passports, dealing with the banks, dealing with finance, anything to do with finances, whether it was your banker, your accountant, or tax or whatever. Everything bureaucratic, red tape, matrix related was just crushing people in the last few days, in the last week. Every person I spoke to. And the sense of overwhelm, panic, anxiety, these were the three common words I heard from people all week. And I was personally going off and having my own meltdowns. And like I said, Mel, unfortunately, you and Biggie caught me in the middle of one. And it wasn't, I know it came across to you guys like I was actually suicidal. I wasn't. It was just, it was coming from everywhere. It was my own personal stuff. It was reading the collective and feeling the collective being buffeted around by all of this. And it was feeling what I believe to be them, those who and behind CERN and everything, feeling the panic. We're getting to that 0 point, and their panic that we're getting to this point of 0 point is what we were as a collective feeling. Now, fuck, I'm trying to think what triggered me into saying this. Because there was a point I wanted to get to. But what I feel today, everything. Sorry?
The prequel conversation that we just had, all of us, before we started recording.
Yeah, but there was something that Mel said in all of that
yeah, I just listened to that twice.
Prompted me to it, to go back to the. So I want to know from the. Yeah, go and tell me. Remind me.
Oh well, you said that you wanted to get everybody's feedback, and then it was a build up to what has happened today to see if anybody else is experiencing things.
Okay. I do want everyone's feedback on whether or not they've experienced the same thing. Has there been a sense of anxiety or rushed or overwhelm? Have you been inundated with bureaucratic red tape matrix crap since last Tuesday or Monday night, whatever? Yeah, you have.
Oh, yeah.
And my feeling on this as to the why of it is, I don't think this is what got. Hang on, I don't think this got said before we hit record. That's what it was. Our history, right? Okay. So what I got to, the point I got to today was that our history is bullshit. Our history is a story that we've been told. We've been told and given a concept of linear time and a linear history that goes back for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And it's actually nothing more than a story. That we're on a movie reel that's being fed through a projector over and over and over again. It's just on a loop. And I think this loop gets reset a lot quicker than we could ever imagine, that it actually only happens every couple of 100 years. I don't think this story that we are living and that we think we're living, and the linear history that we think that lies behind us, exists. I think it's just a story. And our consciousness, the whole collective consciousness, literally goes through a reset. Now, if you look at the movie Dark City,
Yeah.
in that movie, they literally reset.
By the way, hold on really quick. 1998 and 1950 are the only two that I've been able to find. And if I don't ask you now, I'm going to forget. 1998
No,
and
I thought it was
1950 are the
89.
two
Are you
Dark
sure
Cities
it's 98? Oh, it could be 98.
1998.
Okay, go with 98.
Okay.
Go with 98.
Is it,
Yeah.
who's in it? Just so people can go and watch it. Kiefer Sutherland?
Yes. So it has to be 98. It couldn't be.
Yeah.
Okay, 1998. Okay. Cool, sorry.
That's an interesting.
They reset.
Continue.
Yeah, wasn't it? They reset everybody's memories, and they literally change from the ground. This is, I can't, I'm going to give away the ending, but there's this whole mechanism under the ground that they use to change the environment. So everyone goes to sleep at midnight. They reset people's memories. They give them false stories, false backgrounds, false lives, relationships. They wake up the next morning and they think they're married and they're living this life. And then midnight, it all gets reset, and then they wake up in another house with a different family, a different job. I'm just using it as an analogy. I don't think our minds get reset every midnight.
Can I come in on that, Lisa, and
Yeah.
say that I believe our history's been rewritten, whether it's been as prosaically done as that. I think that could be quite symbolic of a greater truth.
Yes.
But I think what they have done, okay, is they have hidden the real history behind symbols. And we were talking about the symbolism, which obviously is synonymous with this realm of information. People become familiar.
Hang on, Mel. Sorry, shit. I just remembered what you said about oral, and what you said, Dee, about writing it all down in caves. Because if you knew that there was a reset coming, and that you were going to forget, and that you couldn't pass down the oral, you would put it on paper. You would put it on a rock. You would carve it into stone. You would something.
Yes.
Because if you knew that your oral tradition, your memory, in order to pass it on, was about to be wiped, that would give you reason to put it on paper.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have just, sorry, I'm just going to get this out just really, really fast, because I had, of course, St. Patrick's Day was just a couple of weeks ago, and I literally tore the heads off all these people who are all like, St. Patty's. I'm like, do you understand the truth of what St. Patrick was and what he did? Really? Would you be wearing green if you actually knew the truth? Okay, the Druids, who were synonymous with oral history, nothing was written down. Everything was orally passed down, and they had various lines. So you could almost understand, like there was a certain line who was all about the history, certain lines were all about the alchemy, the sciences, certain lines were all about the occult. And the Jesuits went in, that's who St. Patrick was, went out and wiped out the Druids. And I just had this thought of, did they come up with a way to perhaps supersede that wiping out of history? And that's why they were wiped out, genocidally wiped out, because perhaps they had figured out a way, alchemically, occult, whatever, to disallow that wiping out of the memory, the reset.
If what I was feeling today, that the reset follows the Fibonacci, that the cycles of reset get smaller and shorter as we go. There is indigenous stories that I heard about a while back about, I don't know if you heard this, Mel, earlier, about the big sleep, where everybody went to sleep for a long time, the big sleep, and when they woke up, everything was backwards and upside down. Now, if you had lived through one of those, right, and let's take also into account that the human body, I believe, is designed to last forever. Once it reaches maturity, it actually self-sustains, self-replicates, constantly is in the process of healing and sustaining itself. If you were able to live long enough to live through one of these resets, and that you knew another one was coming, don't tell me you wouldn't leave clues for yourself. You wouldn't leave triggers, reminders, something to make sure you remembered what you needed to remember on the other side of that. And that's what I think we've been told through academia, what those clues mean. We've been given a story, but that's what those little scratchings mean on that cave wall, and that's what that means over there, and that's what that glyph means, and that was. But I think they were clues that we've left for ourselves to tell us our true history. And we need to rethink and relook at, revisit all of that. Anything, I mean, it's got to the point, honestly, where the system says look left, you look right. I mean, it's just like everything's fucking backwards and upside down. So we may have learnt the art of writing and putting it down on paper from the dragons, but I think we've used it to serve us if we know that this reset happens. And I would not be surprised, I really would not be surprised to find that the last reset was only 100 years ago or 200 years ago. It's that recent. And that's why we're so close to this 0 point right now. And that's what CERN is doing. That's what CERN is trying to do. Yeah, I know, the friggin' Fibonacci, exactly. We're right, see that little big dot, I can see it. That's where we're at.
Well, here's the thing, and I've been so hyper-focused for the last 4 or 5 weeks about the Assyrians, right?
Because they speak Aramaic, right?
The genocide that's going on in the Aramaic. This is the last known culture on the planet that speaks Aramaic. It is one of the ancient languages.
Yep. Loads of Aramaic in here, yeah?
Yes. Oh, yes.
What's that? Mel, you're too far away. We can't even see the book or what it's called.
It's okay.
It's called...
Just know it's a book.
Make sure we
it's The Murder of Reality by Pierre Sabak. And the subtitles, The Hidden Symbolism of the Dragon. But interesting, what you're saying, The Murder of Reality is actually...
Oh, yeah. Huge title. Okay.
Yeah, very, very interesting book.
We have right now, right this moment in the last 3 months, ISIS destroys Nimrud, which is one of the oldest civilization cities on the planet, purportedly, by our known history. The destruction of old monasteries. They just destroyed another one last week, a fourth century Christian monastery. 4th century is a very important time because that is the time when the Vatican was first starting up.
But hang on, Dee, is that in preparation for rewriting the history of those things?
Exactly.
We destroy them now so we can tell a new story.
Exactly. Well, is there something there? What was on those buildings? So that 4th century monastery was apparently covered in carvings. So again, you're leaving notes for yourself. Why are they running through the desert, destroy, and they did it in the last Iraqi war as well, and the one before that. They're running, destroying these monuments covered in carvings, who knows what else, and then they're destroying the people. It's a genocidal destruction of the Assyrian people who speak the ancient language. Now, I had a conversation with Sacha, and I wish we'd gotten into this, about the Magi. We've been told, I mean, it's been in books, it's been in movies, about the society of the Magi.
Brian, can you mute? Because all you're moving around is just, it's drowning D out.
Okay, all these secret society, this secret society of the Magi, who have the records. They have the oral traditions of what the background is. And the fact that these Magi supposedly were Assyrian. So is there some fact in there that we're looking at where we're dealing with, again, a genocide, like the wiping out of the Druids? Now it's the wiping out of the Magi, or the people who may actually have some of that oral history of what really has been going on.
Can I comment on with regards to the cave painting thing? Is that I agree that perhaps people went to hidden caves and they hid some of the history there, because we've just had a whole series of paintings. I don't know if they've just recently been discovered. They've certainly come to my attention very recently. Discovered in France, and the biggest one is of a being supposedly changing shape, and the name of this painting is translates into English as the sorcerer. Okay, anthropomorphized being. So they say it looks like a being turning into a deer with antlers. So it could be a devil or something else, or a shapeshift that we've become familiar with in current culture. But this is what's being depicted. It's called the sorcerer. And why would someone paint that in an obscure little cave? Because they're trying to record that changing of shape, or that shape, or whatever that is, because it's significant for people to know about, but it's hidden. Now, when it comes to carving on churches and stuff like that, the ancient Egyptian culture, what I know for sure is symbolism has always been used as a mechanism of subterfuge. If I have something to say, and I want you to know it's truth, I come out and I say it. And Brian, you've often said I'm very opinionated and whatnot. And I do. People know I'm very direct sometimes, to the point where people go, whoa. But that's it. If I want to be indirect about something, but I still want to allude to it, I might be a bit more cryptic and write a poem or symbolize something. That's how it's done. Symbolism has always been a mechanism of subterfuge. That's it. End of story. So anything that is hidden behind symbols is being done so for a specific purpose, because they don't want everybody else to know what the hell it means. And you only have to look at hieroglyphics, which is a totally symbolic language, to know that they were trying to hide something. Okay? Ancient Egypt. They were trying to hide something from people who didn't understand how to read that. Now, throughout history, who were the people who could read? Who were the people that were taught the arts of reading? We were only able, so English education, or the British education system only started making education mandatory at the beginning of the industrial era, the beginning of the 1800s. Before then, you had to be very wealthy or pay a Jesuit for an education, and then you got a Jesuit education. No. Yeah, that's how you got educated.
On that, okay, just a side note, 99% of the clerks who copied books, who copied the symbols, who even the scriptures, were illiterate. Yeah. And they were deliberately chosen because they were illiterate. So they were copying those letters, those symbols, as a visual thing, yet having no understanding
no clue
of what they were doing.
Or what they meant.
No clue, because they were illiterate.
Yeah, that's why there's so many mistakes and errors. It's easy to make a mistake when you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And
misinterpretations of scripts. It's absolutely the way it happened. Yeah. Only
getting back to the whole clues for ourselves thing, all right? What's coming to my mind right now is watching a special, some sort of doco, on people with no short-term memory. That I watched.
51st
and 51st dates, yeah. And this one woman in particular stuck in my mind. And the woman's house was like almost wallpapered in post-it notes. That's how she got through the day.
Ooh.
She left a post-it note for herself to guide her every step of the day, every step of the way. She had no short-term memory And I think it was as a result of an accident. And so the first thing she saw when she woke up in the morning was a post-it note to tell her what to do next. So she'd go and do that, and there was a post-it note to tell her what to go and do next. And that's what it feels like right now in this discussion, is that what we've done is we've left post-it notes all over the fucking planet in various ways on various cave walls and artworks, and because we know, somewhere inherently we know, that every now and then the whole thing gets wiped.
Lisa, I go one further than that. This has happened to our language. That we've left clues for ourselves in our language. It's that the clues are so obvious that we say them to each other with every breath,
and not without even realizing what we're saying.
Without realizing what we're doing. I'm going to put a little side note in.
Boy, oh boy, have we covered quite the gamut in this call. Okay, hey, real quick before you talk. Hey, yeah, I gotta run. I gotta eat before I call Jorge. So I'm just gonna jump. X him all the way around. Mel, namaste. Love you. Biggie, wherever you are hiding back there, I love you too, man.
He's producing another show.
Not your everyday chit chat. See you guys.
Just another chat with.
Have a good night.
Good night, Brian.
All right. See you, darling.
So that's what my side note was just going to be, guys. It's been about 2.5 hours, I think. I think we've actually overshot our time slot for the round table again.
Again.
And there isn't an opening behind us that we can fill up. So maybe we're going to have to do a to be continued, because I really think that this is a conversation that needs to be continued. This is a really important.
Holy crap, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the beginning of this particular conversation. And it leads, well, no, it's part two, because honestly, last week was part one.
Yeah.
The conversation with Mark and Lily, I think, was the beginning of this, really. And Mel, let's do this again next week, because there's so much more to this conversation, and there's more people to bring to the table on this conversation. For the audience, for those watching, whether you're doing it live, well, so-called live, this is pre-recorded, but whenever you're watching this, please leave us some feedback. We want to know what you felt over the last week, your thoughts on CERN, your thoughts on time. Oh God, there's too many things to ask you about. Linear time and time. I mean, this is where my day today has been so trippy, and just I
had a huge conversation yesterday, and the whole time thing, and the same thing. Nick and I have had hours upon hours of conversation in the last 2 weeks about time. Time is a dimensional aspect. Time in the folding of space in the alternate realities.
But there's
go on for like a year.
Yeah.
There's seriously something about time that is not adding up to me, and I do not think it is linear.
No.
This whole spiral business is just playing out in my head over and over and over again. I wake up with the image, I go to bed with the image, it pops into my image all during the day.
I hear you.
Something about spirals, you know what I know you do. And I think we're on a loop, and I don't think we have the history we think we do. I don't think it goes back the way we think it does. The stories about the time before the moon. Oh, this is another thing. Okay, this is my second call out to everybody listening. What will be tomorrow at the time of broadcast, but is currently now about 3 days away? The Collective Imagination show for this week. Okay, Mel and Dee, if you guys can join us, please do. Because I want to tackle this directly. Because I truly believe that CERN and all the crap that's going on in the world right now, on the one hand, you've got CERN trying to do the reset. Trying very hard to reset the collective. Wipe the memories, insert the new history, start again. And it's not working. On the other hand, you've got all the shit that's going on in the world that's just fucking crazy, crazy sideshow shit that is a huge distraction. So you don't look at CERN and you don't do what you really meant to do, which was actually go back here and remember who you are and remember the power you have and remember why the hell you're here and remember this is actually your show. So on the collective imagination, I wanted to bring it back to that. And the moon came back into big focus as well. The time before the moon. And I would like this week's collective imagination meditation objective to be on the moon and CERN. There was, now I know you've heard this story, Dee. Mel may or may not have. Mel, back in 2010, I'm thinking, had this whole thing about the moon. And this vision crystal clear about what it is and what we can do about it. But what we can do about it, the part of it that was about that was love, the collective of humanity coming together and sending love to the moon, and the whole thing just, we blew it up. We literally, like it was like blowing up a computer, sending a huge energy surge to a computer, and that's what love did. And we got to see it for what it is, and the whole thing just disintegrated. And that the moon is where a lot of this matrix programming is projected from.
I think so.
So I want to focus on the moon. I haven't told Michael Monk any of this yet, so oh, Michael, if you're listening. Guess what? Guess what today's show's about? And CERN. So I want to focus on those two. So if you're listening to this in time to come and join us for the Collective Imagination show on the Wednesday, please do, because the more the merrier.
Tuesday, she means.
No, well, Wednesday for me. So Wednesday if you're in Australia or New Zealand. Tuesday if you're in anywhere else in the world. Anyway, have a look at the schedule. It's on my. The calendar's on my website.
I don't consent to time zones anymore. I'm really done with it.
No, I don't consent either. But that's what I wanted to focus on this week, because this feels absolutely like the timing is. This is the time. I don't know how else to explain that, but it's like this is the week we get to this stuff.
Yeah.
All I know is.
I'd like to make a mention for those who wish to listen to Transficuous News and hear about the horrors of the world in a fun and sarcastic way. Please tune in to Dee's show. What days are that, Dee?
It's going to be a long one. I have, oh God, the shit that's happened this week. Yeah, tonight's show's going to be a long one.
And then, of course, if you can, Thursday, you want more etymology, turn into my Dragonology lecture. Part 2, and I'll be dealing with spirals and all the lovely words associated around it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there's something going on there. I'm telling
Definitely. This one's for you, Lisa.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, if you haven't seen it already, or even if you have, go back and revisit it.
I'm going to.
The movie Dark City
Check
from
it out today.
1998. Now, at the end of that film, it's the same deal as this recent new film with
Tom Cruise, where he's
no
Jupiter Rising.
The Signal.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
It's almost like the same visual at the end of the film. All right, flat little controlled environment. The Tom Cruise one.
And I can't remember what it's called. The day tomorrow, the next.
Day after tomorrow, or something like that. Day before tomorrow.
But it's the same thing where he keeps.
The Day After Tomorrow is an old film.
I've got it, Lisa. I'll send it to you. Actually, I've got it downloaded.
Okay. Yeah, we want to put all these things in the links in the description.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put together as many of these things and I'll put together like a graphic to go at the end of the show that has the links. So I'll put in that link for the YouTube with the CERN versus the Mayan calendar.
Yeah.
Everything we've talked about. So you guys help me compile this list and I'll put it all together.
Okay, we'll do. All right. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us, for going overtime again. We do apologise for keeping you up. Thank you. Oh, Mel, you have to join us again next week, because
Well,
Oh, yeah.
this is a continuing conversation. And there's a couple of others I can think of to bring to the table too. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'll see you on the flip side of whatever's
Thank you.
next.
See you on the flip side.
Thanks, guys. Love you
Bye,
lots.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.